Mary mentioned Child Life, and Child Life has been around for a long time, and it's just, it can make the difference for a child who's staying in the hospital between something that is scary and miserable and boring to something that is engaging, that is uplifting, that is hopeful, that it can even change their treatment, it can change their, the way they respond to treatment. It's really wonderful. And Beth Solomon is here, who is the Child Life Specialist.
A term I haven't heard
at
till
Gilchrist
today.
Kids. Oh, you haven't? So, it's really wonderful what you do. So thanks so much for being with us. And because Don hasn't heard of it, and there are probably a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah.
I get that a lot, actually. So Child Life is a branch of supportive care where it's really focused on helping the psychosocial and emotional health of the child. Kids face hospital situations and very scary situations, and it can be overwhelming. And when you're in that place, you feel helpless. And so what a Child Life Specialist does is we work on creating the sense and the empowerment for children, helping them to continue to be children and have that joy and verve for life for as long as possible in very difficult situations, and specifically healthcare situations.
And you do that in other ways than just hand them a toy or bring in a clown, I trust.
I sure hope so.
But how so?
So when I'm working with a patient or their siblings, there is a lot that's based on play, because the language of a child is play. And so that's how they interpret the world, how they engage with it, especially for the younger age group. But a lot of times it's giving them a break from whatever's going on in the sense of games and play. Somebody that knows what's happening to them, that can see their health trajectory and knows what their clinical experience is or their siblings' clinical experience, and can be a part of that, but also give them that one-on-one attention to say, okay, let's just be a kid right now. Let's just do something fun and enjoy it. Or this is really, really scary. Why don't we take some time through different ways that we can do to practice what the scary thing is going to be, to experiment with it, to be in control of it, to take some power over.
So you might even have like a doll that would explain exactly what's going to happen physically, or...
Exactly. So there's one instance a while back that we had a sibling and a patient that were going to be coming home and being rejoined, and the sibling was coming home with a trach. The patient was coming home with a trach, and the sibling hadn't seen that before. And so I actually got to sew a trach into a doll to be able to demonstrate that, and they could become familiar with what they'd be seeing and experimenting. I have a medical bag that's full of medical equipment, including deneedleized needles. And so we can practice doing blood draws and such things, where they can become less afraid of it through familiarity. Sometimes kids are afraid to have those conversations, but if you can ease them into it little by little, make them comfortable and feel like they're in control.
If I can, one thing a child does, or all child do, is, I don't want to. So I don't want you to give up your secrets, but how do you work your way around that mechanism? You say, let's do this, and I don't want to.
Sometimes they have the choice to say, I don't want to, and that's okay. When they don't have the option, if they have to have a medication or if they have to have a specific treatment, there's ways that you can address that. For instance, one of the things I like to do with kids that are struggling to take their medication is, what are the choices we have open? You have to do this thing of taking your medication, but maybe you can choose if it's a liquid or if it's a pill. If your medications are pills, you can choose what order to have them in, and we can do a silly activity in between them. You can have some power and we can make it fun. So within the choice that they don't have of taking the medication, you create more of them to give them some of the power back.
I would imagine that, you probably are able to do things with the children that even the parents can't do, right? Like, I'm sure if I were a parent, I could see myself going to you to say, how can I get them to embrace this? How can I get them to accept this? How can I get them to talk about their fears? How did you get this training, and do you now just see children, you can kind of spot what it is they're afraid of, or what might be the best way to get them to communicate with you, even if they can't communicate? Let's say they draw, or they...
So children communicate in a hugely number of ways. Drawing, playing. One of my greatest things that I carry everywhere with me is my Uno deck. Because a lot of times people feel that if you're not having direct face-to-face conversations, you're not having those communications, you're getting that sense of what and where that child is. But you can have so many conversations with them if they feel like they're in a safe place. And the biggest thing I've learned is that if their hands are busy, then they feel a lot better. they don't always have to have those vulnerable moments eye to eye. You asked, where I got my background, and so I have a master's degree from Wheelock University in child life specifically, and then have done several internships. And within the child life field, hospice is a very, very narrow area. There's a lot of people in hospitals. Hospice is still an offshoot, but being able to just sit with a child and, we talk about meeting them where they are. What do they want to tell you? Where are they going to be? Are they hesitant about interacting with you? And how can you ease that? And once you can show them that you're there on their level and for them, they're often a lot more willing to have those conversations or do those activities.
Okay, two things. You said you always bring with you, what is it, an Uno deck?
My Uno deck, yes.
Okay, I want to make sure I heard correctly. and I'm thinking that you also have to be a parent of a child life specialist. Do you not? Do you work with parents, obviously?
I work with parents in the sense of helping them figure out what are their goals for their child, and then how can we as a group sort of achieve those goals. With the family that's coming on next, I worked for many years with their child, and it was a situation where the focus was on having that child be able to live the fullest life in a situation where they were unable to move, unable to do many, many activities. And so I was their hands and their feet and whatever they wanted me to be when we were playing. But sometimes even those conversations were very, very difficult to have as a family. And so we come together as the parents and with the child to say, what is it that we're trying to find out, and what does your child understand, and what do they want? And so being able to kind of address that. And many times in very, very silly, ridiculous language. Imagination trips to far-off lands and planets, and being able to go up in rocket ships and steal uranium, all in imagination.
Yeah, okay.
That's good. So you have to be really creative. I'm curious, when you talk with children, and I'm going to ask you to make a generalization that might actually not apply, but do children have a better grasp or a more pure grasp on what is happening to their life as compared to maybe their parents, who are so focused on the treatment, who are so focused on an outcome that they have in mind, that the child is oftentimes dictating? Really, if you listen to the child, it will give you a more pure sense of how to talk about life, how to talk about death, how to talk about what's next.
Many do. Many of the kids we work with are very aware of what's happening to them, even when their parents are trying to keep it from them. And we've had situations where parents don't want to have those conversations with their kids. They're trying to protect them, and the kids know. And it's not because anyone said the word die to them or anything like that. They know. They seem to have an intrinsic awareness. And the sheer willpower that they have, oftentimes, to even meet certain goals. So in a sense, I suppose there could be that almost purity of knowledge. There's other kids that don't have that at all, and it can come as a surprise. But most of them seem to have some awareness of what's happening to them and determination what they want to have happen. We've had one child that had a very specific goal. We've had other childs that had more vague ones, and seeing them and the willpower they bring to it.
I just wonder if you found yourself in a position where you've had to communicate with the parents by what you've learned from the child to help ease that gap in thinking.
Yeah.
Or
one of the funny things when working with kids and their parents, and sometimes separately, is the fact that parents and children are often trying to protect each other. And parents don't necessarily want their child to be afraid of what's happening, and kids don't want their parents to be sad. And so they will often be thinking and doing the same things, just not saying it to each other. And so sometimes bridging that gap between them and being able to be open, whether they want to have that same conversation in the same room or I'm the go-between or intermediary.
Is there a step in your process when you tell the patient what's going to eventually happen?
If the parents feel like that's what they want, and if the child is ready or open to hear it. More often it'd be an inquiry about, what do you think is happening, and seeing where their thought process goes, and following along with that conversation where it takes them. Most of the time, the kids already understand if you're at a point for that conversation, or they'll ask you directly.
you seem very much a psychologist as well.
On the job training.
I bet. We have, John, is there a question?
Yeah, we have a question from our audience. Is the child's academic education suspended during this time?
Sometimes, and sometimes not. We have several families. Many of our kids are still actively going to school, whether it's full-time or part-time. Sometimes we have families, children that go, for mornings or half days. And then there's also programs like Home and Hospital that will come into the home to give schooling for the kids that are still able to do it. If there's at a point where they're just unable to, then schooling will be suspended. But for the most part, many of our children are in school and holding on to that as well, because school is a huge part of their social life as well.
And they need routine, right?
And routine is huge. Routine gives a sense of security and balance and safety.
Normalcy.
But there are so many hours left in the day. I mean, if you're doing hospital and home care and going to school, it's just amazing that could be done. That's not asking for a comment. I'm just making one.
Mary talked about where a lot of the funding comes from and that they have a lot of people supporting them. And I do get the sense you could always use more. I know with Child Life, you need all kinds of tools in your little kit. And how are you funded? How I guess it all comes in through the hospitals?
Yeah, my funding, I believe, Mary could confirm this, comes from a grant for my position as well as donations for the materials and everything else. The Gilchrist Kids program is almost entirely, if not all entirely, donation funded. And so anything helps. As far as materials go, it's usually me going to the local arts and crafts store or whatever random thing I need from a random place and seeing what we can do to make it go a long way. Craft paper is always a beautiful thing.
I mean, you have to be in touch with kids, too. I mean, everything's changed technology-wise, and you need to know what games they're into. So
I'm trying so hard to catch up.
It'll never happen. They'll always be ahead of you.
There'll always be another one once you're caught up.
When people ask you what you love about your job, what do you say? Because I'm guessing you love it.
The children. They are facing some of the worst situations that they can possibly do and have such huge amounts of attitude in doing it. And I mean in a good way. Like, they are there to show off themselves, show the world that they are really strong people, that they're still fulfilling dreams and still very, very much present, even though they may not be able to be as active as they were. And they're just a joy to be around. And sometimes you have those kids that, really, really change your life because they're such a huge impact.
And as both you and Mary mentioned, when people hear what you're doing, they think of it as sad. Why isn't it sad?
I think one of the reasons why it's not so sad is, we of course have our sad days. And I have had times when I'm sitting there crying in my car after a particularly heartbreaking visit. But most of the time, we are going in there and finding ways to bring joy and peace and support to families. And when you can have a situation where families wish for their child is to see that child smile again and then make it happen and even bring it to a point of laughter, and where they spend those times when they're so sick with a terminal illness, but they're smiling and laughing and going on family trips and, playing games and pulling pranks and basically being a child. That's what gives it the joy. Yeah.
And even though they're children, I've met some children who were dealing with really serious situations and illnesses and disabilities. And there's, and this is, again, is a generalization, but they seem to develop a sense of maturity that you don't often find in other children their age. Do you find that as well?
I do. A lot of times with kids, it's when you're exposed to such extreme situations, health-wise or whatever, at a young age, they have a greater sense of their own mortality that most kids don't learn until they're adults. And so being aware that life is precious at a young age causes, I think, that maturity to grow. And it along comes with this appreciation, the embracing to do whatever you possibly can.
It was interesting to me that you said that you studied child life in college, and I didn't realize it was even sort of a major in that sense. And I would imagine that child life, the whole philosophy of it, is still relatively new. I don't know when it was started, maybe in the 60s or 70s, but do you think that there needs to be so much more done to educate the general population about issues of mortality and issues of death and dying and grieving and all of that?
I do. It's sad that we live in a culture that is so scared of death, and we avoid it so much because, as sad as it is, it's really a very, very normal part of life. It's one of the few things you can say that happens to everybody. And so finding ways to educate the public, educate our nation at large about how to make it less scary, how to make it more bearable. This is a sad thing, but if we can make people aware of what the possibilities are, we can build in some of those reinforcements and supports that make it easier to deal with.
Wow. A service I like to render is there anything that you came prepared to tell us that we didn't ask? This is your point to edit yourself, kind of.
Oh, those are always the really tough questions.
That's the toughest of all, isn't it?
Of course. It's always easier to answer
Something
them.
you were dying to say that we didn't ask.
You know, pediatric hospice is one of the things that I think all of us bring our heart and soul to. And as sad and upsetting and tragic as it can be, it can also be really, really beautiful. And I just want people to be able to know that, and to know that it's all encompassing for families. I work with the parents, I work with the patient themselves and siblings, and provide supportive follow-up care. And so just because you're in the worst situation of your life doesn't mean it has to be this awful, awful thing. It can be made better. It can be made more beautiful. It can be made something special.
There
even.
can be joy there still.
There can be still joy.
Well said. And thank you again for being with us. It's Beth Solomon, Child Life Specialist at Gilchrist Kids. And once again, as we keep saying, thank you for what you do.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks,
for having
thanks
me.
so much.